岸辺に友と鳥が咲き、磯のかたく波枯れし、19の青春道迷い、哲学語り時は過ぎる、友は悩め貧しけれ、キリストの道まで行くも、人々厳しく突き晴れて、強き鼓動に波寄せり、崩れしく手に草くかく、いかなる虫か知らねえの、今宵は鹿を作らぬの、学兵団の踊り場に、誰の友を目してる、光になまだ命、新年の月に飛びゆかう、涙を拭いいたったり、友の補修に誰もまた無限の願望人生の苦しみ開くも誓いしる、友は微笑み訳して白髪までも突きかかる、君に幸あれ我が友よ、次に会う日はいつの日か、雲の内のまたれ旅、いつまで行く鳥が咲く、岸辺に友と鳥が咲き、磯のかたく波枯れし、19の青春道迷い、哲学語り時は過ぎる、友は悩め貧しけれ、キリストの道まで行くも、人々厳しく突き晴れて、強き鼓動に波寄せり、崩れしく手に草くかく、いかなる虫か知らねえの、今宵は鹿を作らぬの、学兵団の踊り場に、誰の友を目してる、光 の月に飛びゆか涙を拭い浸ったり友の星にあれもまた
Ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant afternoon. Just a few announcements. At the end of the program, we will be flashing the QR code and link for you to be able to apply for a certification of attendance. Also, you may use the chat box for your questions for our guest panel speakers.
And in a few minutes, we will be commencing our program. We hope everyone will have a stable internet connection despite the heavy rain all throughout the webinar. Sit back, relax, and have a meaningful reflection of the past and the present for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon once again to everyone and welcome to the webinar brought to you by Peace Philippines in collaboration with Miriam College Center for Peace Education.
In commemoration of the 75th Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings.
With the theme, The Makings of a Peaceliner, Stories of Hiroshima and the Pandemic. We are indeed grateful that you have joined us to commemorate this very special day.
Our event for today will surely give us a lot of learnings about the event that happened 75 years ago and the circumstances that we are facing currently.
I am Julian Ann Bukaw from the Student Catholic Action of the Philippines.
And I am Nobuyuki Ota from Sokagakka International of the Philippines.
And we will be your moderators for today.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, so now some of you may not have heard the name of the host of today's webinar, Peace Philippines. To introduce us, may we call on Mr. Marco Gutan, President of Angel C. Palanca Peace Program Foundation, Incorporated. Let's give him a round of virtual applause. Mr. Marco, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Marco.
Afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Nobu. Thank you, Miss Julian. Magandang po sa inyong lahat. Good afternoon to our distinguished guests, Mr. Severino, Miss Okimoto, Dr. Castro, Dr. Chua, Miss Katakyan, Miss Serrano of SGI Philippines, convener of Peace Philippines, and all Peace Philippines partner members, teachers and trainers participating today, and all the students. Welcome po sa ating lahat. Just to introduce Peace Philippines, so a little bit of introduction. Peace Education Advocacy Consortium and Engagement Philippines, or Peace Philippines, started in 2012 as the University Belt Peace Consortium with 5 schools. They are FEU, MUU, Arellano University, UE, FIATI, and Philippine Normal University. Now, it has evolved and in its current form, which started during the Angel C. Palanca Peace Program Foundation Incorporated's annual Peace Education Training Seminar, which was held May 8, 2018. Now, it's now a network of not only schools, but organizations and even government organizations and agencies. No? So it's dedicated to working for schools and communities to live in dignity and enjoy basic human rights through strong institutions that are agents of peace. No, so we cooperate with one another to promote peace and human rights. And to that end, we support important partner institutions through collaboration and by providing training for students to cultivate them as peace builders. Executive Order 70 and CHED Memorandum 1 series of 2019, both oriented towards peace education. We support the conduct of evidence-based research and dissemination. And we also organize activities in schools and communities that are critical spaces, which will promote peace and human rights, such as activity during the International Day of Peace and International Human Rights Day. We also serve as a resource center and hub for peace advocates, resource speakers, experts, and trainers in conducting peace education in the Philippines. We organize forums, discussion groups, and exchanges to encourage and facilitate learning on peace issues within and outside the school community and barangays. No? And so these are some of the engagements, of Peace Philippines today. And with that, we invite everyone to join us to promote the culture of peace in the country and world. No? Thank you and namaste.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Marco. At this juncture, may we call on Mr. Jonel Reyes from the Student Catholic Action of the Philippines to lead us to Silence for World Peace. Mr. Jonel?
Now, we are going to practice stopping. I invite everyone to find a comfortable place to feel relaxed. This afternoon, we will listen to the true stories of the past and the present situation. Let's stop for a while. Stop with your body and mind. Let us recognize the different sounds we hear, the different colors, and the different objects we see. Let us try to tell ourselves to stay relaxed by inhale and exhale. While we are breathing, let's recognize the air entering in our nostrils. Recognize our heartbeat. This heartbeat is a good reminder of the unconditional gift of life. The life what we are trying to hold in our hearts. Let us try to open the transforming power of life. Life is valuable. You are alive and worthy. Your life is valuable. Our life is enough. And let's try to stop. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sir Jonel.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jonel, for leading the silence for world peace. For today's activity, we have invited two panel speakers to share their experiences and knowledge with us. Once again, may we remind everyone to mute your microphones so that we'll be able to focus on the discussion of the speakers. You may post your questions and comments in the chat box. Now, let me introduce the first speaker. She is currently based in Metro Manila since October 2016. She had lived in Hiroshima for more than 30 years since she was 4 years old. Worked at the Hiroshima Peace Culture Foundation from April 2003 to August 2005 and May 2008 to October 2016. Her parents-in-law, her husband's side, are Hiroshima A-bomb survivors. After 3 years training, she was certified from the city of Hiroshima as an A-bomb legacy successor and started sharing the story based on the wartime experience of Mr. Mitsuhiko Segoshi in December 2018. She's graduated Bachelor of Arts in Humanities at Soka University, Tokyo in March 1995, the 12th batch of the Asian Peacebuilders Scholarship Program, Dual Master of Arts in Peace Education at University for Peace in Costa Rica, and in Political Science at Ateneo de Manila University in December 2019. Everyone, please welcome Ms. Naoko Okimoto with a round of virtual applause. Ms. Naoko, please come in. Ms. Naoko, good afternoon. Please wait for a moment. She's coming in now, right now. Sorry for the, we are having a technical problem, so please wait for us patiently. Thank you so much for your consideration and understanding. Hello, Ms. Naoko, good afternoon. Can you hear us? Ms. Naoko, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Ms. Naoko. Can you hear us?
Hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Okimoto from Hiroshima. It is an honor for me to be given this opportunity to speak to you at this online event organized by the Peace Philippines to commemorate 75th anniversary of the atomic bombings over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Today, I will talk about the sufferings of the Hibakusha or even survivors after the bombing, which seem to be parallel to current situations affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Then, introduce some examples of survivors who transferred their sufferings to peacemaking. First, I'd like to briefly 75th anniversary of the atomic bombings over Hiroshima. Introduce the outline of the atomic bombings. In 1945, the first atomic bomb was dropped over Hiroshima on August 6th and over Nagasaki on August 9th. In the cases of atomic bombing, people continued to die after the bombings. Within 5 months, by the end of 1945, it was estimated that around 140,000 people died in Hiroshima and around 74,000 died in Nagasaki. After effects such as keloids, leukemia, and other cancers lasted for decades. To this day, the effects of the bomb are still harming the health of urban survivors. Now, I'll show you some pictures of injured people. If you do not want to see those pictures, you do not have to look at them. These are examples of keloids and burns. The picture on the right shows dark patterns of kimono were severely burnt on her skin. The picture on the left shows the keloids on her arms. This person developed purple spots called spots of death due to radiation. When these spots appeared, death was fast approaching. This picture was taken on the day he died. Now, let's look at some points after the bombing, which I found seem to be parallel to the current situation. The first point is lack of medical capacity. Medical facilities and healthcare professionals in Hiroshima and Nagasaki also suffered devastating damage and casualties from the atomic bombings. Physicians were prohibited from evacuation at that time. In the case of Hiroshima, 19% of the physicians and healthcare professionals were affected by the atomic bombing. Now, let's see an example of what a nurse in Hiroshima went through after the bombing from her daughter's memoir. Ms. Chisako Takeoka was 17 years old at the time of the bombing. Her mother was 42 years old, a nurse and missing for 6 days after the bombing. Chisako found her mother and took her home with the neighbors. Quote, surprised, I looked at her face and saw that her right eye had popped out of its socket. Glass shards stuck into her face all over. Her nose was broken, so I could see the bone. It was all she could do to keep breathing, unquote. She heard that doctors and medicines were available at an elementary school in a suburban area. She took her there. However, once they got there, a soldier told them, just few moments ago, the doctor and the nurse vomited blood and died. And only a veterinarian was still alive. There was no anesthetic or any sort of painkiller. As she was head nurse, the mother understood what kind of operation it would be and said, I don't need this surgery, stop this now. The veterinarian said, deep in your socket, the nerves of the eyes are connected to each other. If we don't do anything, the rot will spread to your other eye and blind you. We have to take your right eye out now and disinfect the wound. Then the operation by the veterinarian without painkiller began, and she heard her mother's screams, wails, and sounds of struggle. Later, her mother never ever spoke about her eye until she passed away when she was 62. Chisako commented, quote, whenever I remember her, I'm keenly aware that the atomic bomb scars not only bodies, but leaves wounds that no one can heal deep in the heart, unquote. Next example is a case diagnosed as infectious disease. At first, the cause of the symptoms related to the atomic bombing was not known even among doctors. So there were cases, those symptoms were considered as due to an infectious disease. Ms. Kazuko Kawada was exposed to the bombing when she was 13. More than a month after the bombing, her body went out of order. Quote, bleeding from gums and throat was designated by law a sign of diphtheria, but stools meant typhoid fever. With no facility to isolate me and no doctor or medicine to treat me, I had to fight the disease alone, lying in a storage room in my grandparents' house. I was isolated in the storage room, not allowed to go out. We kept my legally diagnosed infectious disease secret from our neighborhood, unquote. Next point is, nursing and close contact with the patients could cause secondary exposure. Many people went to the city after the bombing to search for their family or relatives or doing rescue works. Many of those people got sick and even died in a similar way, those who were directly exposed to the bombing. There are cases people who took care of survivors closely were also affected by secondary exposure to radioactive materials, even though they didn't go to the city center. Next point is anxiety over I could be the next. As people continue to hear or see many cases, even people with no injury suddenly got sick and died one after another. They are very afraid of they could be the next who would get sick and die. Ms. Kazuko Kawada stated, all the classmates who survived had the same fear. As a result, we have still never talked about that day. We are all afraid to talk about it. We all carry intense feelings of grief, having so abruptly lost family members, friends, our entire communities, and even normal daily lives, unquote. Next, discrimination. There are many cases those who have scars or killers also suffered from discrimination. They try to hide their scars wearing long sleeves even during summer. Discrimination to hibakusha were rampant when they try to find a job and especially when they try to get married, such as they have a health problem so they cannot work hard. Or there are many cases where the family found the bride-to-be was a hibakusha, they are often forced to be separated. This made many hibakusha not to apply for the survivor's health book to hide the fact they were exposed to the atomic bombing. Next point is financial difficulties. There are also cases of financial difficulties for various reasons after the bombing. Their houses and properties were destroyed. The breadwinners for the family were lost. Many of them couldn't work due to their health problems. And there were also cases they couldn't find a job due to social prejudice against hibakusha. Thousands of children also lost all their family members and became orphans. And lastly, lost educational opportunities. School buildings were destroyed and many schools were also used as evacuation centers. Most of the students were very sick after the bombing, so they couldn't resume the classes for a few or several months. Here, I'd like to introduce 4 examples of hibakusha transfer their sufferings into their activities for peace. First example is Dr. Takashi Nagai, who coped with Evan disease. Dr. Nagai was at his office at Nagasaki Medical College, only 700 meters from the ground zero. He lost his students and his wife, but he resolved to devote himself to the relief of the survivors. There are immense numbers of injuries and cases of atomic bomb disease, and people are dying one after another. Dr. Nagai suffered numerous cuts on the right side of his body as a result of flying splinters of glass. The cut in his right temple was so deep that caused blood to spurt out like a fountain. Dr. Nagai continued his relief activities with a bandage around his head, but finally collapsed as a result of blood loss. The symptoms of atomic bomb illness appeared around September 10th, and Dr. Nagai lost consciousness. Miraculously surviving, Dr. Nagai resumed relief activities and returned to the lecture. However, in 1946, he collapsed, and after that, he was confined to bed. Although bedridden, Dr. Nagai continued his research and writing on atomic bomb disease by offering his own body for medical research. From the tiny room about 4 square meters in area called Nyokodo at Yourself Hermitage, Dr. Nagai produced famous works as a way to encourage the people in the neighborhood. He knew he was dying soon, leaving his 2 children behind. Most of Dr. Nagai's income went for the benefit of poor children and people suffering from atomic bomb disease. In the midst of extreme chaos and poverty after the war, a lot of children lost their parents in the atomic bombing or who were too poor to receive a proper education. Dr. Nagai also led the effort to establish a private library for those children to play and read books. Dr. Nagai passed away when he was only 43 years old in 1951. Next example is Mr. Mitsuo Kodama. Mr. Kodama was exposed to the atomic bombing when he was 12 inside a wooden school building only 876 meters from the ground zero. Most people exposed within 1 kilometer of the ground zero received more than the median lethal dose of radiation and died due to the acute effects, but he managed to survive. The TV program focusing on radiation after effects on survivors within 1 kilometer from the ground zero, featuring Mr. Kodama, was broadcasted in 2005. It challenged his style of sharing his airborne experience, focusing on the radiation damage to his chromosomes. When a chromosome is damaged, genes that were arranged in a certain order fell into disarray and cause cancer or other problems. Those survivors with chromosome damage escaped death. They live the rest of their lives feeling that their own chromosomes will induce some sort of cancer. Mr. Kodama went through more than 20 surgeries against cancer since he was 60, including rectal cancer at age 61, cancerous gastric polyp at 63, thyroid cancer at 70, and nearly 20 types of skin cancers. He has been describing these things showing the pictures of his own chromosomes. Doctors at the Radiation Effects Research Foundation conducted a special test on his chromosomes using the M-FISH or multicolor fluorescent in situ hybridization method. The pictures show his normal set of chromosomes and abnormal chromosomes. They were dyed 24 colors to distinguish them from each other. The report stated, we observed 100 cells and found translocations at 102 points. In other words, they found an average of 1 translocation per cell, and 102% is a very high frequency. Translocations happen when 2 chromosomes break apart and reciprocally exchange tips. Radiation breaks a pair of chromosomes and the broken pieces attach themselves to a different piece of DNA. This is a chromosomal aberration. He stated, quote, I couldn't hide my astonishment when the doctor told me, there is no hope that your chromosome aberrations will recover and become normal because your stem cells are damaged. My chromosomes greatly reinforced my conviction that we must completely free our planet of nuclear weapons. As long as I remain on it, I will continue to share these facts about my atomic bomb experience, unquote. Next example is Mitsuyo Kataoka from Nagasaki. She was exposed to the bombing when she was 14. She was severely injured. When her neighbor saw her face, she was shocked and began to cry. She was also shocked by the damage on her face, became hopeless, and felt difficulty to live. This is an excerpt from the story based on her experience. The keloid scars made very hard. My eyelids wouldn't shut because of the keloids on my face. My lips were half sealed shut from a keloid that was 1 centimeter thick and 5 centimeters wide on my mouth. The skin of my right thumb and index finger was stuck together, so I couldn't hold a knife or the needle. When I saw someone I used to know, I would hide. Children would point at me and say, look at her face. I went through a very painful and depressing time. In May 1946, We left the hospital and moved into a rundown shack. However, I suffered from a disease in my chest and couldn't work. Our financial situation became worse, and my mother, who was already over 70 years old and had a bad back, sometimes went work on a farm and cared for me with the little money she made, unquote. She underwent surgery on her hand and face, which helped her handicap and overall health. In 1951, she was offered a job to clean bathrooms at a hospital when she was 30. Quote, we lived paycheck by paycheck, but I was happy that I could live with my mother, even if we could only afford meager things, unquote. After her mother's death in 1962, she lived alone. When she was around 50, her financial situation finally improved. However, she suffered from gallbladder inflammation, which continued to worsen. By 1982, she could no longer work and gave up her job after 30 years of working. Ms. Tsuyo Kataoka was inspired by the words of the Pope to start her peacemaking effort. Quote, he stated, war is the work of man. To remember the past is to commit oneself to the future. I was deeply struck by these words and considered my role in life as a hibakusha, or a Taliban survivor. As one who survived, isn't it my destiny to commit myself to the anti-nuclear movement? I believed that the time had come for hibakusha to have courage and speak out, that even someone like myself could contribute to world peace. I decided to participate in the making of a movie that recorded the experience of hibakusha. Because of this film, I was given the chance to meet the Pope himself in 1982 at the Vatican, unquote. She remembered his words, war is wrong. Please continue your efforts. I thank you. Once she had even wanted to die, but she felt so glad to be alive. In her hope to fight for nuclear abolition and realize true world peace, she began speaking about her experiences to students who come to Nagasaki on school trips. Quote, the tummy bomb must never be used again. Regardless of where people are from, I do not want anyone to ever suffer from the atomic bomb again. My biggest wish is that more people will pray and act toward world peace, unquote. Tsuyo Kataoka passed away in 2014 at the age of 93. And the last example is Ms. Sako Kataoka, who shares the story of her mother went through operation by a veterinarian without anesthetic. She lost her first child 18 days after his birth, covered with spots of death from his chest to abdomen. She also had seen those spots on her own arms. However, Chisako got another child, Mariko. Mariko used to accompany her grandma when she was going out to look at her grandma's blind right side. Later, in 1982, Chisako testified at a dialogue meeting of the UN Special Session on Disarmament in New York, and in 2001 at a Russian university. She is an official Avon storyteller at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. She also trained many successors of her stories. Her daughter Mariko also conveyed her mother and grandmother's story as an Avon legacy successor designated by the city of Hiroshima. This is an example of the second or third generations join the activities of hibakusha toward peace. They are SGI members, and according to Mariko, her mother Chisako transferred her traumatic experience she had never wanted to recall or share to her mission to speak out for world peace through her SGI activities based on the guidance of SGI President Ikeda. and she still continued working for peace until now at the age of 92. Chisako stated, such tragedy must never be repeated. Nuclear weapons must never ever be used. As long as I have life, I will continue to speak out, unquote. So what I could introduce you today was just a limited example of their experiences. Each of them has overcome much more difficulties, and each of them transferred their sufferings to their activities for peace. There are many more survivors who had similar or unique experiences as well. I believe they contributed to prevent the third use of nuclear weapons for the past 75 years. Their devotion to protect younger generations from the sufferings they went through inspired younger generations to succeed in their activities for peace. However, the Hibakusha's challenge toward a peaceful world without nuclear weapons still continues. Even today, it is estimated that there are 13,400 nuclear warheads around the world as of January this year. Each of these modern nuclear weapons is hundreds of times as powerful as the first atomic bombs used in 1945. It is our turn to work for elimination of nuclear weapons. Under the current COVID-19 situation, the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum and the Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Museum also needed to be closed for a while. Now they are open again, but some of their activities are still restricted. Let me introduce two messages from the Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Museum during their struggle with this pandemic period. This is a message with paper crane wishing to settle down COVID-19 by the Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Museum. All the employees of the museum used these donated variable paper cranes and created a message wishing to settle down the pandemic and for peace and safety of frontliners, essential workers, and those who need to stay home, as well as many potential visitors who would come back after they reopen. The message reads, from the place where we pray for peace, let's hang on and connect to the future. This message was displayed at the museum from May to the second week of July. And finally, I'd like to conclude with this message displayed at the entrance of the Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Museum from the day the museum was closed on April 10th. 75 years after the atomic bombings, a message from Nagasaki. Nuclear weapons, environmental issues, and COVID-19. The way to tackle all these global issues is fundamentally the same. Have a sense of commitment, extend compassion to others, imagine the consequences, take action. Let's take a step forward this year as we mark the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombings. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Naoko, for sharing with us the important stories of the survivors of the A-bomb. So medyo naiyak na ako sa mga stories na share niya. And Ms. Naoko, we will be seeing you again in our panel discussion later on. All right. Now, we will be having our second panel speaker for this afternoon. He has been a journalist for 32 years and has produced over 200 TV documentaries, at least a dozen of which have won domestic and international awards. He anchored the morning news at GMA News TV for 8 years. From 2009 to 2014, he was editor-in-chief of GMA News Online and headed GMA News social media operations. In other stages of his career, he was a newspaper reporter, book and magazine editor, and a co-founder of the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism, of which he is still chairman of the Board of Trustees. He is also currently the vice president of GMA Network, responsible for training and development of its journalists, as well as policies related to journalist safety. He graduated from the Ateneo de Manila High School and Tufts University in Massachusetts with a degree in history, a magna cum laude, and has received his master's degree from Sussex University in the United Kingdom. He is a COVID survivor after spending 11 days in isolation in a COVID hospital. His documentary on his experience, Ako Si Patient 2828, recently won Best Documentary in the recent Gawad Tanglao Awards. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Mr. Horacio Howie Severino with a thunderous virtual applause. Good afternoon, Mr. Howie.
Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to meet all of you virtually, and magandang araw din sa mga kapwa naka-quarantine. I'm sure many of you have been on lockdown and just looking forward to interactions like this among people who are share the same interests, and I understand there are also people from other countries. There are people on Japan listening in, so thank you for joining us today. Yes, so magandang araw sa inyong lahat. Kung nakamute ako kanina, mga kapwa naka-quarantine, and our friends from Japan and other countries. Thank you very much for joining. Again, my name is Howie Severino. I've been in journalism for 32 years, about 20 years already, and more than 20 years in television. And I've covered a wide range of human experiences, from conflict, disaster, to culture, environment, to art, festivals, travel, community development, local issues, national issues, global issues, etc., etc. And I'll be spending the next 20 minutes just sharing some lessons from my experiences. But I also have the rare experience, as mentioned earlier, of being a COVID survivor. And I want to share some revelations, some insights from that experience as well. But throughout, I'm going to be sharing some personal mantras that I've been telling myself throughout my life and throughout my career to help me through the hardships of life and to enable me to confront the various risks and dangers in my job and just living in the Philippines. We know that just living in the Philippines, there are risks. And all of these personal mantras represent principles and just driving forces in my life that have helped me cope with this pandemic, with all of the struggles that we've been facing in this pandemic, and in particular, it helped me survive and thrive despite my experience as a COVID patient and now survivor. So throughout my career, I've been telling myself this first mantra: constantly challenge yourself. Every day there should be something new that you learn. I'm known I've been known in my work as never or hardly declining assignments. I've looked forward to difficult jobs and assignments, and I think that opens up a lot of opportunities, but also creates inner strength if you are constantly challenging yourself. Along with this, for you to be able to meet challenges, you have to stay fit. I'm quite sports-minded. I love the outdoors. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I have a lot of physical activities, and by staying fit, I think it also helped me survive. I'm open to new experiences. Be open to new experiences, all of you. Here I am. paddling a boat on one of the very polluted esteros of Manila. Now, most of us would not dare to even get near or get wet in our esteros in Manila, considering how dirty they are. But I wanted to explore them and make a story about life around and in the esteros because they're interesting. And as long as you make sure that you're safe and you protect yourself, it's possible to do these kinds of activities even in harsh environments. And I think all of these things that I've been doing in my career, the attitudes that I've had, the personal mantras that I've told myself, made me ready for whatever came my way, including catching the coronavirus. I was infected by the coronavirus in March. I was one of the early patients in the Philippines, and I was one of the first patients in the Philippines. And I found out that I was sick because I had a fever for about a week. And then when I had a checkup in one of the local hospitals here in Quezon City, they found pneumonia in my lungs, which is one of the symptoms of COVID-19. So I had a fever. And when I had a checkup, they found pneumonia. And then they did a swab, a PCR test on me. And they found that I was positive for COVID-19. And this is my first day in the hospital. I was wheeled in. I was still in my civilian clothes. And I didn't know what was going to happen to me. At that time, the reports in the news showed that there were more deaths than recoveries. So that filled me with a certain dread because at that time, I felt there was no telling where I would end up, whether in the recoveries column or in the deaths column. So one of the treatments that was given to me was this drug, chloroquine, a controversial drug, as many of us know. It's recently been banned from drug therapy, but this is since I was an early patient and this is early on in the disease. This is one of the experimental drugs given to me. And I had to be monitored for possible side effects, one of which was cardiac arrest. I was in danger of my heart suddenly stopping. And I was given this drug under the principle of compassionate use because there was no drug therapy at that time for COVID-19. And even up to now, there's no government-approved drug therapy. But since my body was not responding to the other treatments, they decided to try this controversial treatment on me. And here I am, flat on my back most of the time with wires on all over my body to monitor the state of my heart, the heartbeat, to make sure that it was regular. And they had to monitor this through sensors in various parts of my body to make sure that there was no irregularity in my heartbeat. And I was going through all of this uncertainty, all of these treatments, all of the pain and experience of being sick with this rare disease, with this new disease, all alone. I was all alone. So that is one of the unique aspects and one of the worst aspects of this disease is that those who are suffering from it have to suffer alone. You're not allowed to receive visitors. Even if you're dying, your family cannot see you. And even when you're already dead, they cannot get near you. And you have to be cremated because of the danger of infection. So that scares a lot of people almost as much as dying. The thought of dying alone, the thought of your families not getting near you. And during my illness, they put the IV line on my right arm, so that it was also very difficult for me to write and to text and to communicate with people in the outside world, because since I could not receive visitors, my only connection to the outside world was through my telephone, through messaging apps, through texting, through calling. And because I had these contraptions, these tubes connected to my body, it was also very difficult to communicate even in that way. So it only exacerbated the kind of loneliness I was going through. But luckily, I have a supportive family, I have a supportive wife, and they kept in touch with me on the telephone. There was one night that I felt that I was going to die, and I called up my wife and told her that I wanted to say goodbye, and I was already giving her my passwords and sharing some final thoughts, some final wishes about what I wanted done with my possessions, with my books, with my papers, etc. But she would not accept the thought that I would die, and she convinced me that I would not die. She walked me through some meditation exercises and eventually replaced the thoughts of death in my head with more pleasant thoughts. Thoughts about our vacations, thoughts about our times together, thoughts about our shared meals, thoughts about our experiences with family, our experiences in the environment, with nature, etc. And I think it helped save my life. And one of the things that I think is underappreciated and misunderstood is the role of mental wellness in the physical recovery of COVID patients. Because when you are a COVID patient, much of the attention is on your medical condition and on medical treatment. But I think what a lot of people do not understand or do not appreciate is how important whatever is going on in your mind is. Your mental wellness is also of essential value to your physical recovery. And this is one of my advocacies, is that us also pay attention to what is going on inside the heads of patients and not just in their bodies, not just with the virus, not just with this disease and what it's doing to our lungs. So a big part of our experience as a married couple is resilience, because for most of you living in the Philippines, you probably heard about our volcanic eruption. We live very near Taal volcano. This is the view from near our house on January 12, 2020, earlier this year. It's the first major disaster in the Philippines of 2020, followed shortly after by this pandemic. But this eruption already taught us to wear face masks because of all of the dust, all of the debris that was in the air. So surviving that volcanic eruption in January 2020, the experience of helping our neighbors and helping other survivors, because we survived quite well, taught us the value of cooperation, taught us the value of solidarity with a very recent experience. So we like to think that when this pandemic happened, those of us who were living in Batangas around this volcanic eruption had already built up a certain strength of character, a certain resilience, because we had already known that if we were going to survive a disaster and recover from a disaster, we had to help each other. We had to have cooperation. We had to have solidarity. So after my family and wife helped me through some very difficult nights, my fever broke and I started to get well. That's why I'm convinced that along with the excellent medical care that I received, the attention given by my wife and my family to the state of my mental health was crucial to my recovery. And soon, after I recovered, I got to know other survivors quite well, like Isa Calzado, a Filipina actress who was an even more severe case of COVID-19, and Senator Sani Angara, who I was in England with while we were both in school there. He was also a patient. He was also a COVID-19 patient and survivor. And all of us survivors are very grateful to the nurses, doctors, medical technicians, and other hospital workers who took care of us. The frontliners, they're called today. They're real heroes. And I wanted to show these pictures because early on in March, during the early part of this disease, there were not enough protective personal equipment or professional protective equipment for the frontliners. And they were wearing raincoats like this. And if you ask the frontliners how they were, they will say, oh, I'm sweating inside. So it must have been very, very difficult for them to wear this kind of protective clothing 8 to 12 to 16 hours a day while attending to gravely ill patients. There you are, another one. Eventually, the frontliners during my stay in the hospital started wearing professional protective equipment like this Hamzat suit that some of them started wearing. Another mantra I have is you should always give credit to others, and in particular, I always give credit to the frontliners and the nurses, especially, who took care of me. This is one of them, Gabriel Lazaro. This is after I got well already. We went back to the hospital for a swab test. We both removed our masks for the picture, but we both always wear our masks otherwise. I'm always grateful to the nurses, and in particular to Gab, because I taught him how to shoot while he was taking care of me in the hospital, and the both of us collaborated on a documentary that Julianne mentioned earlier. So among the things that I did for my frontliner was give him credit in an article. Aside from the documentary, which was also partly about him, I also wrote about Gab. I say thanks to him on Facebook and on Instagram, and I'm always in touch with him. And when he recently got sick, because he also got sick recently, he thought it was COVID, but it was just, he was just having a respiratory ailment. I sent him food and I sent him good wishes and good energy. So at the end of my stay, I was already smiling because I knew that the uncertainty was over. I was going to survive. I was going to recover, and it was just a matter of time. And I was surprised by the frontliners of the hospital, because as soon as I exited the hospital, upon being discharged, there was a whole line of them applauding and cheering for me. And I think they were cheering for themselves as well. Because for frontliners in hospitals, in COVID hospitals, whenever someone recovers and is able to go home, it is a victory, not just for the patient, but for everyone working in the hospital. Every survival, every recovery is a victory for everyone involved in the care of the surviving patient, because many patients do not survive this disease. So when someone like myself does survive and recover, it's a cause for celebration and a cause for gratitude. And before I left a note on the whiteboard in my room. And in Tagalog, it's ang kagitingan nyo'y hindi ko malilimutan. In English, your heroism will not be forgotten. And I addressed that to the nurses who took care of me every day, every hour that I was in isolation in my hospital room. So another mantra that I tell myself is document your experience, no matter what it is. You never know if you can use it in your work. You never know if you'll want to remember. Sometimes you will forget something, and the only thing that will help you remember what happened to you is your documentation. And in my work, that's very important because I am a documentary maker. So my experience as patient 2828 was documented by me and by my frontliner nurse, Gab Lazaro. And we turned our video material into a documentary called Ako, See, patient 2828. I am patient 2828. It's currently on YouTube with English subtitles. If you haven't seen it, it contains a lot of information and stories, not only about my personal experience, but the experience and world of frontliners. Because very rarely do you have someone able to shoot inside the isolation COVID ward of a hospital. Journalists generally are not allowed there, and the only people who are allowed in there are patients and the people who take care of patients. Not even the families of patients can go there. So in this particular case, the patient happened to be a documentary maker who trained his nurse how to shoot. And this is our product. So mark milestones in your lives, even small ones. In this picture, I'm showing frontline workers in my small town in Batangas delivering to me the negative results of my last 2 swabs, which enabled me to be declared officially a recovered COVID patient. One of the requirements back then of being declared officially recovered is 2 negative results from consecutive PCR swab tests. So here are the frontline workers delivering the results to me, and I thought this is like graduating from COVID. And we marked it with this little ceremony as if I'm receiving a diploma. And I'm now sharing this milestone with all of you. Another lesson that I always keep in mind whenever I experience anything that I needed to survive, including this disease, is we should always know what truly matters. And when I was discharged from the hospital and I was finally declared a recovered patient, I still had to be in quarantine, but I could stay with my family finally. I was finally able to spend time with my family, and I spent a month with them on leave, on sick leave, and on personal leave. And I did a lot of biking, and as you can see, I am already strong enough to go biking in our home province of Batangas, and that is my son. That is my 18-year-old son when we were biking around in Batangas. And crisis begets opportunities. There's a saying, never let a crisis go to waste. You know, we can feel bad about a crisis, and we can see a crisis as something that only takes away things from us, deprives us of things of value, deprives us of things that we love. But crisis can also create opportunities. Crisis can make us better people. And in particular, the crisis of this pandemic and the crisis of having been a patient in the hospital, sick with this disease, created the opportunity for me to now meet people like you. I would not be speaking to you right now if I did not have this story. So to me, this is an opportunity that was created by a crisis. And in a way, it's a silver lining, because I've met a lot of people. I've been able to give people inspiration and hope simply because of this accidental experience of getting sick. And one of my new fans who watched my documentary created this poster and started sharing it on Facebook. And another lesson that I've learned is we must all pay it forward. It's very difficult to pay back the people who took care of us and made sure that we survived, but it's easy to pay it forward. It's easier to pay it forward. I can never repay the people who enabled me to recover, but I can pay it forward. I can pay back the universe by doing something like donating my plasma to help humanity. And in this way, I am paying back the cosmos. I am paying back the universe for giving me more time on Earth. And when I first donated plasma back in May, the hospital staff were so happy. The nurses and the doctors and the medical technicians were so happy about having a new supply of plasma to give to gravely ill patients that we all posed for this celebratory picture, because it was, again, a cause for celebration whenever a survivor of COVID comes forward to be a donor of his or her plasma. In case you don't know, the plasma from COVID survivors is used to help save the lives of other patients, especially those who are severely ill. Because our plasma contains antibodies that can fight the virus. It was formed in our blood to fight the virus. So when we donate the plasma to the hospital can transfuse it to other patients to give them a fighting chance. So my plasma donation was televised, and it was used to help mobilize other survivors to give plasma. Because one reason why there is a shortage of plasma to give to other patients is because not enough survivors know how to donate, and very few of them know that it is painless generally and very easy to donate. And I always tell others that it gives you an incredible feeling. And I like to joke with some of my friends that holding my own plasma in that bag, knowing that it represents life and it's a life-giving substance, is like holding your own newborn. And it may be the closest a man can get to the feeling a woman has after giving birth. Of course, men will never have that feeling, but holding your plasma as if it's a newborn infant maybe approximates that feeling. So I'm now an advocate for COVID survivors donating their plasma so that others may live. So I have evolved from journalist to COVID survivor. Now I am an advisor in my TV station on the COVID safety of my colleagues, because of my deep experience in receiving treatment, in talking to a lot of doctors and surviving this disease and researching the various medicines and treatments and ways of coping. I was appointed a safety officer in charge of COVID in my TV station. And as part of this role, I have been developing guidelines for our personnel, for both reporters and office-based personnel. These are just examples of some of these guidelines. One of the practices that we have trained our personnel to do is to do interviews from a distance, such as this. We do not ask many of our subjects to come out of their homes. We interview them in their homes with this long pole that we call boom mics. Another example of this, we also use ladders and tripods and long lenses so we can shoot our subjects from far away. We do not need to get near. So we receive training to do this as well, to help protect our personnel from infection. And of course, we disinfect our gear, our cameras, microphones, telephones, headphones, etc. We have disinfection tents in our compound. So these are some of the things that I have been advising our personnel to do. And I have a lot of authority and influence to do that, simply because I survived this disease and people listen to me. whenever I talk about it. So I also tell our personnel, take care of yourself, but take care of each other. Remind each other to follow the protocols. Remind each other to put their mask back on. Remind each other to maintain a distance. And always stay fit. Early on, I was telling you that one of my mantras is to stay fit. After I got out of the hospital, I needed to regain strength, so I started riding my bicycle again. And you may have heard that back on July 8th, 2020, while I was drinking during a bike ride, I was arrested by the police because I pulled down my mask, which became news. Because by that time, people already knew me as a COVID survivor. So a lot of people were amused, and some people were annoyed and even angered that someone who had to drink and pull down his mask in order to drink, and as you can see, we had physical distancing, was arrested. So here I am in the vehicle being brought to a holding area for other people who were arrested on the same day for pulling down their masks. And because that also made the news, I became a verb meme on social media. People created drawings and were kind of making fun of that incident. And there was a lot of humor about it. In case you can't read it, it says, para hindi ka mahawi sa daan. So my name became a verb. So here you have a drawing of a biker with an IV line attached to him with water flowing through his veins so that he would not need to pull down his mask in order to drink. Here is another. This is how we do it. So, despite the great sorrow and loneliness and tragedy associated with this disease, let's not lose our humor, because it enables us to stay positive. And if we stay positive, it gives us a better chance of surviving, coping, and even thriving despite the challenges that face us every day. And, people were sending me new designs for masks so I wouldn't have to remove them in order to drink. So here's one funny one. I don't know if this person is really serious. So just last week, I gave plasma again for the last time. Just August 3, 2020. They measured the antibodies in my blood, in my plasma, and they found that I still had enough to donate. I still had barely enough to donate, which I did, enough to hopefully save the life of another COVID patient. And while I was there, I met this couple who had also recently recovered from COVID, and they were also there to donate their plasma. And they said they were there because they saw me on television donating my plasma, so they decided they could do the same thing. So that also inspired me to keep doing this, to keep talking about it, to keep advocating, because it can have an impact not only on what other people do, but on the survival of other COVID patients. So, surviving and recovering from this disease is not an end in itself. I like to think that I survived for a purpose. There has to be a meaning in one's survival, because many people do not survive. And as I mentioned earlier, those of us who survive this disease have a responsibility to pay it forward and to serve others, serve the public. And the way I serve the public is I gather information and I present the information to help people protect themselves and to help people make decisions, make the best decisions for themselves. Know your role. Because I have antibodies in my blood, I have greater protection than most of my colleagues. Of course, I am not careless, I am not irresponsible, but when someone has to volunteer for a risky assignment, such as recording the voices of people on the street about how they are experiencing this pandemic, this crisis, I can volunteer to do so because I have more protection than the average colleague in my TV network. And as mentioned by Julianne earlier, my documentary last week won an award for Best Documentary of the Year. Even though the year is not over, it was already given an award. And I am also an advocate now for kindness, because as we know, along with this disease and this pandemic have come a lot of discrimination, a lot of cruelty, a lot of impunity, a lot of harsh words, the use of force. And I think it is up to people like myself who have some kind of moral authority now, who have some kind of moral influence on others, to advocate kindness, advocate generosity, advocate cooperation, advocate solidarity, advocate peace. So I know that there's a lot to be sad about and a lot to be scared about, but I want to end by telling you that there are positive trends now as far as this pandemic is concerned that I've noticed. One is, if you get sick, the odds of survival are good. I am one example of survival, but there are many other examples of survival. As I told you back in March, there were more deaths than recoveries. Now, there are many, many more recoveries than deaths. So if you get sick, I know everyone is scared of getting sick. If you get sick with COVID-19, just know that you have a very, very good chance of survival. Some people still pass away, and it's a very, very tragic thing. But not everyone does, and most people actually survive. Because the therapies are improving, the drug therapies are improving, doctors are learning how to treat this disease. And people forget, because there's so much attention on Metro Manila and Cebu, that many parts of the Philippines are still free of infection. You go to many provinces in Mindanao, you go to Palawan, you go to Batanes, you go to the mountain areas, the Cordillera. There are many towns and villages there where there's not a single infection, which is good. And I hope they stay that way, because that's a reflection of good governance, discipline by citizens, and correct policies and safety protocols. We are also seeing greater and greater global cooperation on drugs and vaccines. And I think the more the world gets together to cooperate on researching and developing drugs and vaccines, the sooner we will get them and use them, so that we can be liberated from our lockdowns. And finally, what I'm also seeing, and what many are also seeing, is an era for reimagining. Reimagining our world, reimagining our lifestyles, reimagining our values and priorities, reimagining the ways we do things in our jobs, in education, in journalism, in politics, in government. This pandemic is a wake-up call, because it's so difficult to change certain things in the world. But because this pandemic has suddenly disrupted everything, we can actually use it as an opportunity to improve the world, to improve the way we live our lives, to improve our relationships with others, and to improve the ways we conduct our own lives and think about ourselves and our roles in society. And in all of this, I think all of us who are alive today, who have survived this disease so far, I think we should just give thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Okay, thank
Howie.
you very much,
Thank you so
Mr. Howie, for that inspiring talk and inspiring message.
Thank you so much. So at this point,
Thank you for the
we would
opportunity.
like to thank you so much, sir. Now we would like to invite once again our two speakers for our panel discussion or question and answer. Good afternoon once again, Ms. Naoko Kimoto. Can you
Good
hear us?
afternoon, Ms. Naoko.
Hello, yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. So now, Julian,
Okay,
we start the
we
question and
have
answer.
gathered questions from our viewers, and questions will be flashed on the screen. So let us begin. So both of you speakers, what do you think are the peace efforts young people like us can contribute to make this world a better place to live in, free from discrimination and supporting good governance? So why don't we hear Ms. Naoko to answer first for our first question. So Ms. Naoko.
Wow, thank you. It's a big question actually, but we can always start from us, from our daily lives. For example, we can encourage your friends or your family members. And even though we cannot directly meet your friends, maybe you can just contact them online, and so just treating people around you well could yeah, we can start from those things.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Naoko. How about you, Sir Howie?
I think we can start by just doing what we can in our own small worlds, because youths generally most of you do not occupy positions of power, but you can control what happens in your own realms, in your own homes, in your schools, in your own communities. And I think one concrete way you can contribute to peace is by living more lightly on the earth. Because as you know, the human race, especially in modern times, has basically declared war on the earth. We have harmed the earth for future generations. And it's the responsibility of the current generation to restore harmony, to reverse some of the damage that's been done, and adopt values that will enable the human community all over the world to tread more lightly on the earth, so we do less harm to the world and to each other.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
So
Thank you so
our
much.
next question.
So let me read the next question, Sir Howie. This is for you.
Mm-hmm.
Having been a COVID positive survivor and surpassed the infection, as a non-journalist, how can you rate your own psychological effect now?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the last part. How can I what?
How can you rate your own psychological effect?
How can I rate my own psychological effect?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's if I were to evaluate myself, I like to think that I have done well, that I've managed my recovery well. I have taken care of myself. I think I've been responsible about myself. I have not been overconfident about my health. Although I have antibodies in my blood, I am still following safety protocols. And in terms of my psychological health, I think I've done pretty well. And I think one sign of that is that I think positively. I'm trying to be constructive. I don't focus on the negative. I don't feel bitter, or I'm not blaming anyone for what happened to me. what I'm doing right now is what I described. I'm trying to pay it forward. I've donated plasma. I've advised others. I'm sharing my story with all of you because not only does this maybe help others, but it helps me. Because there are lots of studies that show that the key to happiness is not collecting material things. The number one cause of happiness is being able to help others. That's not a motherhood statement. There is scientific research that backs that. There's a field in psychology that focuses on the sources of happiness of people. And the number one source is serving others. So when you serve others, you create much better chances of you being happy. And because I am spending a lot of my time devoted to serving others now, including communicating these stories to you, I think I put myself in a good position to be happy. And I think if you are generally happy, you can give yourself a fairly high rating when it comes to your psychological uh, situation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Julian, no walang boses.
Oh, I'm sorry. So thank you, Mr. Howie. Next, we have a question for Miss Naoko. Aside from storytelling the history of a bomb and a policy by your government of a nuclear-free Japan, is the history of World War II, Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the school curriculum? If yes, how is it being taught and where and what grade is it being taught? If no, do you think this is important? So, Miss Naoko?
Thank you for the good question. Actually, as far as I know, teach about atomic bombing, it's not specifically stipulated in the curriculum. So it's more like depending on the school or depending on the educational council of each municipality. But generally speaking, there are a lot of schools. School dispatch students to Hiroshima or Nagasaki as an excursion generally in grade 6, grade 5, and maybe grade 8 or 9. Or maybe high school. So actually, so many school groups visit Hiroshima and listen to survivor stories and visit atomic bomb dome and museums like that. And usually, before those visits, teachers have specific lessons before coming to make those students prepared. So even though it's not specifically set as a national curriculum, I think in terms of peace education, they are doing pretty good in this field in Japan.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Naoko. Now for the comments, or the questions that are here in our comment section, we will be sending it to our speakers so that they may be able to answer it in another time. So we may now proceed to our next part. Sir Nobu.
Yes, thank you so much for your active participation. And our webinar is coming to an end. We hope that all of you have many take-home experiences from our webinar. To synthesize our webinar today, may we call on founding president of Salam at ASEAN, the vice president of UNESCO APNIP, and a co-founder of Peace Philippines, Dr. Wilson Chua. Wilson Chua, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dr. Wilson.
Good afternoon po. Please mute your microphone, Dr. Wilson. unmute.
Dr. Wilson, hindi po kayo maririnig.
Dr. Wilson.
Dr. Wilson?
Hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can now hear you po.
Okay, yes. Okay, yes. Okay, yes.
Oh.
Okay, yes.
Oh.
Oh, oh, oh,
We apologize for the noises. Dr. Wilson, could you
Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Can you
Hello?
hear me?
Can you?
Yes, Dr. Wilson. Could you try once
Wilson?
again? Dr. Wilson, could you try once again, please?
Yes. Please check your microphone, Dr. Wilson.
Can you hear me?
Dr. Wilson,
Since Dr. Wilson? Okay, Dr. Wilson, we will get back to you. And that for now, we will ask Ms. Kim Katakian for her perspective from the youth. So Ms. Kim Katakian of Community Partnership and Extension Office, Philippine Normal University. Here is her synthesis. Let us all give her a warm virtual applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. Magandang araw po sa ating lahat. Ayan, so we had done listening to our speakers, Ms. Nauko and Mr. Javi Severino. So what we had learned right now is that peace is an intergenerational legacy. A legacy that has been passed on to the younger generation, to us. But are we ready to take the challenge of fostering peace? As we are facing another struggle provided by the pandemic that the coronavirus disease 2019, or famously known as COVID-19 caused, we see ourselves in the middle of a story that creates a critical juncture, leading us to deciding options that will make impact on how we cope with the effects of this crisis. Similar to what the survivors of the Hiroshima bombing experienced 75 years ago, a story is unfolding in front of our own very eyes. The story of loss, of survival, of life. These are the stages that we saw both in the bombing and the pandemic. Loss of loved ones, normality and living, the ones that we used to, survival to live, coping to the changes that the crisis caused, of life, finding a new way to make meaning of living. Some of us may still be in the middle of these, but we can eventually adapt anew if we accept the fact that we need to move on from the ashes and ruins to the beam of hope that we can do. And it starts in ourselves. We need to be open to the stories from the past to understand and connect to our present situation. We need to be curious on how our elders were able to survive and live, bringing the lessons that they learned and the reasons for their formed advocacies. We need to listen to their stories, record the anecdotes, and reflect on how this changed their lives that affects our very own right now. We are interconnected through relation and time. Our ancestors who experienced the impact of the bombing was able to take action and to make the lessons and the realizations alive today. History and reality unveil to us the need of peace. Peace is possible, even in times of uncertainty. As we cope with the challenges, we are struggling to our perspectives and the way of living. It challenges the stability of our advocacies that we wish to live up. The vulnerability of times and the changing needs shift also our focus, testing our resiliency in living out the essence of our advocacies. Difficult at the start, but we can maintain our advocacies of peace through learning from the lessons of the past, being humble through realizations and willingness to listen, and eventually take heart and have courage to stand up to those who are with you, struggling also during these times. Having the courage to move on and stand up for those in need of voice is an important attitude of a peaceliner, an individual who is dedicated to fostering peace despite the challenges that unprecedented situations may bring. Like for us right now, who are facing the pandemic caused by the COVID-19. A peaceliner takes up the challenge to encourage and take action in peace building towards others, despite of the situations that affect our inner and outer peace, that we try to protect throughout our lives and using these to build peace. A peaceliner's transformation starts in his or her own realizations that he or she can make a change in our society, even in our small ways, such as in our own families, friends, communities, and in the whole world. Especially that we have the power provided by the social media that expanded our influence right now. Our voices now is powerful enough to educate the world, and we too can create such for peace building. We can be creative. We can be resilient. We can be an agent of change as a frontliner for peace in our own ways. The diversity of our actions is what makes the call for peaceliners meaningful, as it shows that we do not require certain roles to be called a peaceliner. All of us can be a peaceliner. Are we ready to be one? Are we ready to be a peaceliner? Because all of us are peaceliners in our own ways. Maraming salamat po at magandang araw po sa ating lahat.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Kim, for that very inspiring message to the youth. Now, why don't we go back to Dr. Wilson Chua for his synthesis? So, is Dr. Wilson ready?
Good afternoon, Dr. Wilson.
Good afternoon, Dr. Wilson. Dr. Wilson.
Okay, so here is Dr. Wilson
For his synthesis.
Okay, so
Dr. Wilson, can you hear us? Because you are still on mute po, Dr. Wilson.
Yes.
Can you please unmute your microphone?
Okay.
So we are still having troubles with Dr. Wilson's audio.
Everyone, thank you so much for patiently waiting.
Yes.
Our technical team is working right now.
We are still. Okay. So while waiting, we can see here in our comment section that there have been a lot of viewers from different places here in the Philippines. We have from Caloocan City, we have from Ilocos Norte, Lawag City, we also have from Cebu, from Makati High School, we have from Quezon City, and there are still a lot of you who have been inspired by the talks of our speakers a while ago, giving them very encouraging words, and as well as cheering on to the speakers as they continued on with their talk a while ago. So I see that a lot of you have been inspired with Sir Howie's words, Miss Naoko's stories of the Hiroshima survivors. And I'm so thankful that you have been enjoying our webinar so far. We also have here from Las Piñas. Okay,
and I
good
think we
afternoon.
have participants from Japan.
Yes.
Yes, from Japan.
We also have from Japan as well. All right. So is Dr. Wilson already okay with his audio?
Dr. Wilson, try to speak.
Yes.
Could you try to speak?
Please. All right. So Dr. Wilson is already with us.
Hear me?
Yes,
Yes, we already hear you.
I can hear you, but
good afternoon.
Yes,
we can hear you, sir.
Yes, po.
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Malinaw na po.
Yes. Okay, so I guess Dr. Wilson can continue with the synthesis.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
sir.
po. So, Dr. Wilson.
We can hear you, sir.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. You may now proceed. Go ahead with your... Go ahead. Yes, Dr. Wilson. We can already hear you, so you may now proceed with your synthesis.
Can I go back to the Zoom?
lady. Okay. So you may now go ahead, Dr. Wilson.
Okay, so maybe it takes a little bit more time for him to adjust. Once again, thank you so much for patiently waiting for the synthesis by Dr. Wilson.
Yes. So
waiting a little bit more.
So I can see here that there are also viewers from Nueva Ecija and Las Piñas, and also from Bamban, Tarlac. So good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for joining us for this afternoon.
How about the visiting area, Visayas, Cebu, Mindanao?
Yes, I actually have few of the members from my organization also watching and being with us here this afternoon, listening to our very inspirational speakers a while ago. Yes. All right. So, Dr. Wilson, are you ready?
Now they're checking the sound system.
Yes. Dr. Wilson, we can't hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes. Many actually hearing us. They can hear you.
Could you try speaking again for us so we can assure that we can hear you?
Sir?
Can you hear us, Dr. Wilson? Okay. So here in our comments section, we have other viewers here from Dasmariñas City, Cavite. We have viewers from Olongapo City and from Japan. All right, so we have a lot of viewers for this afternoon. And greetings from Miriam College. Okay.
Thank you so much, our core collaborative organizations.
Yes.
And we have a guest from New Zealand. What time is it now in New Zealand?
Yes. What time is it in New Zealand?
Cagayan de Oro City. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
So, Nobu, I heard that you are also part Japanese or what?
No, I'm a 100% Japanese.
You're a 100% Japanese.
Yes.
Oh. So let's check if Dr. Wilson is already audible.
Can you try, sir? I think your microphone is already unmuted. So now we can hear your voice.
Okay, we also have the Taneo family from Cagayan de Oro City. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon po, Sir Taneo. Kumusta po kayo dyan?
We have a question here in the comment section, and yes, you can have the certificate after the program once we project our QR code later on for the certificates.
Yes, please scan or go to the URL so that you can apply your certificate of attendance. Thank you so much for asking.
Yes. Okay, so is Dr. Wilson ready? Dr. Wilson?
I think his presentation is already ready, so anytime, any moment, yes, he'll be speaking. Is it Dr. Wilson?
Dr. Wilson.
Hi, sir. Try to speak. Could you try to speak? I think your sound is already.
Okay. Yes, I think that Dr. Wilson is almost ready.
Okay, there's a go signal from the technical team. Once again, everyone, thank you so much for patiently waiting. Our presentation will be starting soon.
Okay, so I guess we will proceed with Dr. Castro, and we will get back to you once again, Dr. Wilson, for your synthesis.
Okay.
All right, so let us call our partner organization for this afternoon's webinar, Dr. Loretta Castro of Miriam College Center for Peace Education, to share with us the current status of the nuclear abolition campaign in the Philippines and globally. Good afternoon, Dr. Castro.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, we can hear
Good
you.
afternoon.
Hear you
Yes, good
very
afternoon.
well.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
And well, it is now my pleasant task to issue our call to action and just give a few minutes or a couple of minutes for the slides to be pulled up.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, so here is your slides, Dr. Castro.
Yeah, so this is our call to action. We look forward to having the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons ratified by enough states so it can enter into force. So our speakers have made it abundantly clear that nuclear weapons abolition is a cause that humanity has to work for to protect people's lives and the very life of our planet Earth. The current pandemic has convinced us what our true priorities ought to be. That is, our financial and human resources should not be squandered on the production and modernization of nuclear weapons, for they serve no moral or practical purpose. The tragedy in Hiroshima and Nagasaki 75 years ago is a lesson we should never forget. True security comes from the fulfillment of our basic human needs, including good health care and adequate sustenance for people who are currently struggling, and nurturance for our degraded natural environment. The good news of the year 2017 was the negotiation of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons at the United Nations, and because of its efforts as a global network, the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, 3 years later, what is the current status of the treaty? 82 states have signed, 40 states have ratified, and I understand that tonight there will be one or more states that will be added, but they have not yet announced it. The ratification of the treaty by 10 more states has to happen for a total of 50 states before the treaty can enter into force. And what about the Philippines? The Philippines signed in 2017, but the Philippine President's office has not transmitted it to the Senate for unknown reasons. Hence, the ratification process cannot yet begin in the Philippine Senate. So what can we do now as citizens? Well, first of all, we have to learn more. And the ICANN website can help us do that. We can join the petition to governments to sign and ratify the treaty. We can share the stories of the survivors, like what we heard from Nauko earlier, and keep the nuclear abolition campaign alive in our own groups and communities through commemoration activities such as this. We can also raise the awareness of many others on the treaty's importance. In this time of the pandemic, we can still do it via social media, and if you're a teacher, through the integration in online classes. Let us prepare the groundwork, because once the treaty is in the Philippine Senate for discussion, we need to actively lobby each senator to approve its ratification. It will be a struggle because, sadly, many still believe in the perceived deterrence value of nuclear weapons, despite its catastrophic and unacceptable consequences should any detonation happen. Last slide, please. Let us find inspiration in the words of two world spiritual leaders. From Dr. Daisaku Ikeda, president of Soka Gakkai International, and I quote, "The time has come to challenge nuclear weapons from a moral perspective." And from Pope Francis, who has categorically condemned not only the threat of their use, but also their very possession. He said, "Nuclear weapons exist in the service of a mentality of fear that affects not only the parties in conflict, but the entire human race." And finally, let us heed the words of hope from Mahatma Gandhi. He said, they told us it was impossible, and then we did it." Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Castro, and we will surely put to heart all of the things that you have said for us this afternoon. So, Nobu?
Yes, I think the Dr. Wilson is now ready to talk. Dr. Wilson. Hello, Dr. Wilson. Good afternoon.
Dr. Wilson, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well already. Good.
So kindly proceed your presentation. Yes, there it is.
Sorry for the interruptions.
Oh.
No worries, sir.
No worries.
And I hope I did not give you unpeacefulness because of the interruptions. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Peace Philippines for giving me a chance to give this synthesis, and at the same time do some peace reflections. And of course, I also would like to congratulate the two speakers, Ms. Nauko and Sir Howie, for very informative, and not only informative, but transformative discussions. You know, peace is not information only. Peace is also transformative. You will notice that my title is Peace Synthesis, because my synthesis will end up with peace. Hopefully, we'll acquire peace at the end. You will notice there's a house there because peace starts in the house. And I'm also talking here in the name, in behalf also of UNESCO APNIF. APNIF is Asia Pacific Network for International Education and Values Education, founded by none other than our founding president herself, Dr. Lourdes Kusumbing. Today, we solemnly commemorate the 75th anniversary of the detonation of atomic bombs over the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, resulting in horrific casualties and devastation. The long-term effects of radiation exposure also increased cancer rates in the survivors. And what we have heard, felt, and experienced in the slides are very informative and true to life experiences stories, discussion of Ms. Naoko. On the other hand, we also heard clearly the extraordinary human struggles of Mr. Howie Severino in order to survive COVID-19 and how he had practiced mantras that paved the way for him to later acquire that sense of gratitude. That is what life is all about, gratitude. That's why commencement exercise should be called gratitude exercise. It's not graduation day, it's gratitude day. Apparently, this pandemic has affected thousands of people who are either sick or being killed due to the spread of this disease. This being a new viral disease has affected humans for the first time. And sad to say, vaccines are not yet available. With this situation, we would like to answer the question of our theme, the makings of a peaceliner. So you will notice there's a concentric circle. These are symbols of peace, that there is a way out. Even though you go around and around, there's a way out. So that is peace. At the same time, below is the Baybayin word for kalinaw, which is peace. So a peaceliner is not just a peace educator, peace advocator, but everybody who's listening now, you are part of this peaceliner. We got this from putting together frontliners, homeliners. Now we have a new word coming out, peaceliner, meaning we advocate for peace and we would like to share peace to others. The question is, how do we advertently value the past, which is the hindsight, which is the atomic bomb, such as the effects of these atomic bombings and the concomitantly accept and engage the present, which is the challenge of this pandemic, our insight in order to sustain our inner peace, to move forward to the future. That is foresight. What I want to do now is to get a few peace reflections in the journey in making a person to become a peace liner. So I will deal more with the mental issues on the inner peace, like what Mr. Howie Severino mentioned, that the hospitals took care only of the physical illness, but not the mental state of the patients. And I think each one of us is capable of this in the family, the parents, the children, teachers, not only peace educators, but everybody. So these are stages in this journey in understanding how we acquire peace and share peace to others, meaning inner peace. First, we start with let be. So in this pandemic, we have been stolen of so many things that we want to do, so many things that we want to share, our ambitions and everything. But it is what it is. It's a pandemic. It's here with us. We're going to change the past, but in the present, at least we, in our own way, in our own little way, can change ourselves. If we cannot change the world, at least we change ourselves. And learn to accept it and grow from this pandemic. We start Doing what? How do we grow? By being mindful, being aware. Perhaps in the house, in the family, we have been so busy with so many things, we forgot each other. So this is time to be mindful, to be aware of one another, and to be available and present to one another, and to be patient. It's not easy to be together in a house locked down, but we can be patient with one another. And this sense of kindness, be kind. Let you be kind. And very important is let you be reflective. Hopefully, this lockdown, this pandemic will give us more reflections about who we are and to know and understand ourselves as we let it be. As was mentioned by our speakers earlier, that their experiences taught them something, that this pandemic has a purpose. This pandemic has something for all of us. Now, if we understood ourselves a little bit, then we can go to the next stage. The next stage is none other than let go. If we are able to understand ourselves, it's easier now to go to the next stage. But we cannot go to the next stage unless we understood ourselves a little bit. Then we can let go already of our ego, let go of our fears, let go of the root cause of this hostility, grievances, and guilt. It may seem hard at first to let go, but if you understand who you are, then it's easier for you to let go. What you have been carrying, but as you practice letting things go, it will become easier. Here, natanggal na lahat, wala na natira, essentials will be there. And what is this essential? None other than being human. Now we understand what it is without all this icing of the cake. Who we are at paano tayo magiging tao muli, being human. So we are now being challenged to become who we are and become a human being again. Binabalik sa atin ang ating pagkatao. So with this journey, let be and let go, we are ready to go to the next stage. If we understood ourselves and we know our humanness, who we are and what we are, then we could go to the next. But before I go to the next, I want to show you this symbol of peace in Nagasaki. It's a man. We will call him Peaceliner. He's pointing to where the atomic bomb was dropped, and on this side, he's showing that eternal peace. So this is the symbol of Nagasaki's atomic bomb museum. Next, the next stage is let us see. So we have seen, we have been there, we have let go. Now let's see, and this let's see. These are opportunities mentioned by Mr. Howie and Ms. Naoko. So out of these tragedies of the Second World War, 75 years again, the pandemic, we can see opportunities and possibilities. But we cannot see it unless we let it be and let go. Only then can we see that the virus and the bombs are opportunities for us to learn and to grow and to do something positive for the world. And the lockdown, maybe it's exactly what we need to become more mindful, aware, and appreciative of the many things that we have forgotten and taken for granted. And these possibilities can create a sense of humaneness in us. Pagpapakatao. Kanina, tayo'y naging tao. Ngayon, all these possibilities, all these opportunities, all these avenues and creativity can bring out the best in us to become humane. And lastly, as we understand, as we practice humaneness, we get into the flow. We don't disrupt. We flow in the current of the pandemic. Flow is what it means to be at peace. It has sacredness. It is forever flowing. It is like a day and night, summer and winter, power and grace, always in perfect harmony and balance. We flow by being ever present, living in eternal now with the mindfulness. That's what we have forgotten. We don't mind each other anymore. Husband and wife, children and parents, and in the family, how much more in the society? There's so much poverty, so much cry of the earth and cry of the poor. And therefore, we are now asked to go back, put back that harmony and balance. And since we are able to understand ourselves, and we know that who we are bilang tao, na nagpapakatao, now we get into the flow by the ever presence of this unconditional love mentioned by Mr. Howie as well. And I'm very happy that he ends up with gratitude because we have nothing else to say but thank you that we survived. Thank you that we are still alive. Thank you that we are not part of those who died. So this sense of gratitude is very important. And that opportunity gives us that humanity. Sa Tagalog, pakikipagkapwa-tao. So dalawa na lang. Dadagdagan ko lang yung madaling maging tao, mahirap magpakatao, mas mahirap makipagkapwa-tao to join the bigger humanity. Let's pray for Lebanon. They have forgotten what humanity is all about. To be human, to be humane, and to embrace humanity in the name of peace. If we find meaning, then we become mindful. If we are mindful, we become thankful. And perhaps we become peaceful. Perhaps all this journey can help us bring together the real making of a peaceliner. If we are able to do this, create, acquire, and explore our inner peace, we can share it to people who have forgotten what peace is all about and what this peace means for them, especially those who have been undergoing psychological, emotional, mental issues. We have to bring back peace. We have to be a real peaceliner in the making. And hopefully this seminar will bring us back to zero, back to who we are, what we are capable of becoming, and what are the possibilities that we can give peace to this unpeaceful world. Thank you for listening, and sorry again for the unpeacefulness I have created in all of you.
All right.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. Thank you so much.
Thank you
We really
so much,
understand.
Wilson. That was very nice message. Yes.
Thank you so much. Now,
All right.
for a little bit announcement, we, Peace Philippines, will be initiating an online campaign to spread today's message of peace. This is the I Am a Peaceliner campaign. So I think we are going to have a flash the mechanics. This campaign have 3 steps. The first step is upload a selfie wearing a mask. The mask is preferably a creative mask. Number 2, place a caption that will say what the youth of the Philippines can contribute to peace in this time of pandemic. And number 3, post it with the hashtag I am a peaceliner, Peace Philippines, and tag our official Facebook page as well. We hope to see selfies posted online in support for this campaign. Thank you. Julian, please unmute.
Yes, so don't forget to use the hashtags once again, and so that we could be able to acknowledge your selfies. So now we have come to the last part of our program. For her closing message, may we call on Ms. Dalisay Serrano, Vice General Director of Soka Gakkai International of the Philippines, and Convener Peace Philippines. Miss Dalisay, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you, everyone? Maayong hapon sa mga taga Cebu, Davao, Cagayan de Oro na nanonood ngayon sa Mindanao. And we have as far as Lawag, Baguio, Pampanga, all teachers from elementary school teachers from Santa Rita, Lubao, Pampanga. Thank you so much. Tagaytay, Cavite. And we also have viewers from, of course, kanina nabanggit na Japan and New Zealand. Meron din tayo from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Thank you so much for different time zones tayo, pero nandito kayo lahat ngayon, no, sharing with us your precious time. I was also informed that we have an attendee who is also from Hiroshima, but living now here in the Philippines. No, thank you so much again. It is our greatest privilege to have very notable speakers. As you can see, our speakers are intergenerational, making us feel related to each other. And by the way, thank you, Dr. Wilson. Live kasi, kaya ganyan talaga. No? Hindi ka namin makakalimutan dahil dyan. No? And for all of you, dear speakers, thank you for sharing graciously your time with all of our attendees today. This is for all of you, no? And thank you so much for being a part of this youth campaign. No, yun yung pinaka-importanting part na itong program na to. And this event would not be possible without the support of all our partner peace organizations and universities. And to all the members of the behind-the-scenes team, maraming salamat for making this possible. And congratulations to all of you. We have reached, I think, around 237, no, at the maximum. And all of you who are watching FB Live, kayo ang pinaka-importanting parte ng event na to. Words are not enough to express my gratitude to all of you for all the time that you have shared with us in this significant day. A 75th anniversary doesn't come every day. And in behalf of the Peace Philippines, in collaboration with the Center for Peace Education of Miriam College, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Also today, may I share with you Dr. Ikeda's very timely poem for today entitled To My Friends. He said, "When you transform your heart, your everyday actions will undergo a change. And you can even transform your environment. The creation of an ideal world begins with the metamorphosis of a single individual." May this event doesn't stop here. Let us ask ourselves, what kind of peaceliner can I be? This event encourages us to be peaceliners in our own ways. And with that, maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Ms. Isay. So to close today's webinar, may we call in a youth member of the Soka Gakkai International of the Philippines, Mr. Benjera Andaya, to join as we chant for peace. So please pay attention to the screen.
For the chant for peace.
Yes.
All right. So it's already here. The video prepared for the chant for peace.
Please wait for the audio.
Yes. So
it's Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Now, let's chant together for peace. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Namyo Renge Kyo. Daisaku Ikeda said that sharing time and space together in dialogue and the friendship and trust nurtured through the committed pursuit of this process can form the basis for a solidarity of ordinary citizens working to resolve global issues and bring into being a peaceful world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Benjen, for this video message.
Yes. We, the Peace Philippines, would like to thank we, the Peace Philippines, would like to extend our deepest gratitude to our two panel speakers, Ms. Naoko Okimoto and Mr. Howie Severino. We would also like to thank Dr. Wilson Choa, Ms. Kim Katakian, and Dr. Loretta Castro for joining us as well. We really appreciate you taking out time for us amidst your busy schedules, and indeed, we have learned quite a lot from you that we would surely pass on to our families and friends so they too would know the sharings that you have imparted to us.
And we would like to thank our dear audience from the bottom of my heart for being with us until the very end. We hope that you have learned a lot and you would continue to take good care of your health and well-being, especially during these times that we are facing a pandemic. As mentioned earlier, we'll be flashing the QR code for the online certificate, and here it is. This is the QR code and link.
So scan our QR code for the certificates, or you can copy the link that is shown to you right now.
Don't forget.
Yes. All right. Okay. Lastly, we would like to thank the people and organizations behind the success of this afternoon's webinar. We have first Angel C. Palanca Peace Program Foundation Incorporated.
Sokagaka International of the Philippines.
UNESCO Asia Pacific Network for International Education and Values Education.
Student Catholic Action of the Philippines.
Kapatiran Kaunlaran Foundation Incorporated.
Philippine Campaign Against Tyranny.
Philippine Alliance of Human Rights Advocate.
Peacemakers Circle Foundation Incorporated.
Teatrong Bayan.
In Defense of Human Rights and Dignity Movement.
Far Eastern University.
Philippine Normal University.
National University.
And Commission on Human Rights.
All right, so those are all the people and organizations behind the success of this afternoon's webinar. Once again, this has been Julian Ann Bukaw from Student Catholic Action of the Philippines.
And this has been Nobuyuki Ota from Sokagaka International of the Philippines saying thank you so much and have a pleasant afternoon.
Thank you everyone and enjoy your afternoon.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you to all our viewers.
Yes, for staying until the very, very end.
And to everyone who supported us.
Everybody, let's get together. Gotta be with Sensei forever. Cause tomorrow's counting on you. Doesn't matter if you're old or young. Doesn't matter where you're coming from. Cause I look this on my heart and I found home. This is my name. Born into this world I live in, living with this name I give in. Gotta be so much more. I could watch the world keep spinning, but my heart was meant for giving. Oh, yeah, I need to stand up now. Courage is to know what's right and struggle for it. Promise is a vow to never fall. Through the rain and stormy weather, found a light that lasts forever. Yeah, it is brighter than the sun. Everybody, let's get together. Gotta be the same forever. 'Cause tomorrow's counting on you. Doesn't matter if you're old or young. Doesn't matter where you're coming from. 'Cause I look inside my heart and I found home. This is my name. Now I've got so much of you, deeper than the ocean blue. Oh, shaka-baka in my heart. Every day's a new beginning. Shout it out, we're born to win. It's the same. Let us lead the battle now. Courage, like a lion roar and stand for justice. Promise, we will never ever fall. The time to rise is now or never. Purpose is to come together, sing with our voices heard as one. Everybody, let's get together. Gotta be the same forever. 'Cause tomorrow's counting on you. Doesn't matter if you're old or young. Doesn't matter where you're coming from. 'Cause I look inside my heart and I found home. This is when it's time to show the world what we can do. Marching on the victory because of you.
Yeah. One time for the mind and the spiritual. 2 times for the triumphs and the miracles. Remain thankful for the trauma that we made it through. And if you're trying to change the game, you gotta change the rules. You gotta make a way, you know we got some things to prove. And if we make it move, I know that we can break the clouds. I took a stance and I made a dedicated vow to make you proud and say my prayers loud. Peace.